Welcome to the Deep Dive. You're here because, well, you want to get smart, fast.
That's the goal.
Today we're cutting straight to the heart of how great startup ideas actually happen. We're drawing on some insights from Y Combinator.
Yeah, good stuff. Forget just, endless brainstorming in a room.
Exactly. We're looking at a more practical path, spotting real opportunities.
Right. You, the listener, you shared this material, likely because you're kicking around new venture ideas or maybe just curious about how successful companies even start.
hmm
So, our mission today is basically to pull out the core principles. What helps identify ventures that actually have promise?
And steer clear of the pitfalls, right? Those ideas that sound good but don't really solve anything meaningful.
Oh, precisely. Let's unpack what makes an idea truly worth pursuing.
Okay, so first big point, and this one's a bit counterintuitive maybe. The advice is don't try to think of startup ideas.
Yeah, sounds weird, doesn't it? You'd think that's step one, the big aha moment.
But the argument here is that actively trying to invent ideas often, well, leads you down the wrong path.
And it's fascinating why that approach often fails. The source talks about these made-up ideas or sitcom ideas.
Sitcom ideas, yeah.
I like that term.
They have this sort of surface appeal. They sound plausible, like something that could work,
Right.
but they're missing that crucial thing, real urgent demand. Take their example, the social network for pet owners.
Ah, yes, the Pet Connect type of thing. It seems logical, right?
Totally. Loads of pet owners, they love their animals, spend money.
So why wouldn't they want a dedicated network?
Exactly. But the piece highlights the danger sign, that lukewarm response you get.
Like when friends go, yeah, maybe. I could see using something like that.
That maybe? That's not exactly a flood of excitement, is it?
Not at all. So the takeaway is surface appeal is an urgent demand. You need the must-have, not just the nice-to-have.
Precisely.
And I have to say, I fell right into that sitcom idea trap myself, way back.
Yeah, I had this grand vision for an online art gallery. Seemed perfectly logical in my head,
Okay.
but I wasn't actually looking at what galleries needed. They weren't exactly banging down the door for that kind of online thing back then.
Right. It was your model of the world, maybe not theirs.
Exactly. Just because I thought it was a good idea didn't mean anyone else urgently wanted it. Big lesson learned about paying attention to users or potential users.
And that story, it really hits the core principle the source emphasizes, doesn't it?
Which is,
That the strongest startup ideas, they don't just materialize from thin air. They come from finding and solving real problems.
real existing problems.
Yes. And ideally, problems the founder actually experiences themselves.
Why is that so important, the founder experiencing it?
Well, a couple of reasons. First, it kind of validates the problem actually exists, right? If you feel the pain, it's likely real.
Okay, thanks, Seth.
And second, it gives you this built-in motivation and crucially, this deep understanding of the nuances of the problem.
You get it on a different level.
Exactly, you have that intuition. Plus, you become your own first user, which is invaluable for feedback.
Right, for iterating quickly without building stuff nobody needs.
And the source points out a really common startup mistake is trying to solve problems that, well, that just don't really exist for anyone in a painful way.
Which leads nicely into this great analogy they use, thinking about market demand like digging a hole.
Ah, yeah, the whole analogy.
Good one. They contrast those made-up ideas, the sitcom ideas, with the really promising ones.
So, the social network for pets, that's like trying to dig a really wide but super shallow hole.
Right. Lots of people might vaguely like the idea, kick a bit of dirt in.
But no one's digging deep because there's no urgent need driving them. It's just meh.
Whereas a good startup idea,
That's like digging a well. You start narrow, really narrow sometimes.
focusing on a small group.
A small group that has a very intense need, a deep need.
Okay, a well, not a puddle.
Exactly. And the argument is, look, if something easy to build was genuinely needed, urgently, by a huge number of people.
It would probably already exist, right? Someone would have built it.
Probably, yeah. So you look for that deep niche. Think about the examples. Microsoft and Altair Basic.
Right, tiny market initially. Just those early Altair computer owners.
A handful of people, relatively speaking. But those few thousand people desperately needed that software. Their expensive new toy was kind of useless without it.
It wasn't just nice, it was critical.
Critical, that's the word. Or Facebook initially.
Just for Harvard students.
Again, tiny defined community, but the desire for that specific kind of connection within that group was incredibly strong. It scratched a real itch.
So the killer question you have to ask about any idea
Yeah.
is, Who wants this right now? Like today. Who wants this so much they'll put up with a crappy, buggy first version?
From a company they've never heard of.
Exactly. If you can't point to that group, that initial core of desperate users.
Then the idea might be on shaky ground. It's likely too broad, too shallow.
Okay, so find the well. Find that deep, narrow, urgent need.
But, and this is also crucial, the source makes the point that the well isn't usually the end game.
Ah, okay. So starts narrow, but doesn't have to stay narrow.
Right. That deep, narrow focus is often the starting point. For a startup to get really big, to have broad impact, there needs to be a path out of that initial niche.
A path out. How does that work?
Well, think about adjacent problems those first users have. Or maybe related groups of users who have a similar, maybe slightly less intense need.
So you solve the first urgent problem, then look around.
Kind of. You see how your core solution could be adapted or expanded? Think about Facebook again.
Started at Harvard.
Then expanded to other universities, then high schools, then eventually opened up to everyone. The path out was pretty clear in hindsight.
Or Microsoft. Altair Basic first.
Then software for other early computers. Then DOS. Then Windows, Office. They kept finding paths out. The initial focus was super sharp, but the potential for growth was there.
Even if maybe they didn't see the whole path right at the beginning.
Exactly. And the Airbnb example is great here.
Right. They started with renting out floor space. Air mattresses.
Yeah, during conventions in San Francisco when hotels were booked solid. Super niche.
Definitely a well.
A deep well for those specific people at that specific time. Did they envision a global platform for renting castles and apartments back then? Probably not fully.
So the path out kind of emerged.
It emerged organically as they learned about their users and the market. Sometimes it's not obvious up front.
So it makes predicting that path out pretty hard, I guess.
It can be, yeah. The source suggests that founders with a really deep, almost intuitive understanding of a field that's changing fast, they might have better instincts.
Because they're plugged into how things are evolving, spotting needs as they emerge.
Something like that. Being deeply immersed helps you sense where things might go.
Okay, so bringing it all together then. This piece really boils it down to 3 core characteristics of the best startup ideas. Let's recap those.
Okay, the 3 elements usually found in the best ideas are: first, it's something the founders themselves really want.
Addresses their own pain.
Second, it's something the founders can actually build, or at least get a first version built.
They have the skills.
And third, it's something that few other people realize is worth doing. It looks like a niche, maybe even a bad idea to outsiders initially.
The non-obvious element.
Exactly.
And you can see how those 3 tie right back to everything we discussed.
Totally. Wanting it yourself confirms it's a real problem.
Being able to build it lets you tap into that well quickly.
And the fact that others don't see it gives you breathing room, that first mover advantage and that deep niche.
So for you, the listener, maybe exploring new ideas or just curious about how this works, the core message seems pretty clear.
Yeah.
Stop trying to invent brilliance from nothing. Look around instead. Focus on the frustrations, big ones, small ones.
The things that genuinely annoy you or people you know.
Right. And then, as you said, dig deep.
Yeah, dig deep. Who feels this pain the most intensely, like really acutely? Who'd grab even a basic solution because the pain is just that bad?
That initial group, the well.
That narrow but deep well of demand. That's often the most fertile ground.
And then maybe there's a path out to broader impact as you learn and grow.
That's the ideal, yeah. Start deep, then find the path to expand.
Okay, so here's a final, maybe provocative thought for everyone listening to mull over.
Go for it.
Think about those everyday frustrations. Things that bug you, things that bug people you know. Are any of them intense enough?
Intense enough that you or they would jump at any solution, even a clunky one from some unknown startup.
Exactly.